Friends, today we have an unbelievable story for you about a girl who was a Hafiz-e-Quran, one who has memorized the Quran, and the shocking decision she made to marry a monkey. But what happened after her wedding night? Just hearing this will send chills down your spine. This tale is from a long time ago, in a village ruled by a noble chief. He was a righteous man, deeply committed to his prayers and fasting. He was also generous with charity. The chief had a beautiful young daughter, and he dreamed of making her a Hafiz-e-Quran as well. So, from a young age, he sent his daughter to a religious school to memorize the Quran. As the years passed, his daughter, Malika, grew up to be incredibly beautiful. The more beautiful she became, the more she captivated everyone in the village. People from all around started to wish she would become their daughter-in-law. She was known for her radiant beauty and intelligence. Her father, the chief, was immensely proud of her, but also deeply anxious about her future. He often worried about what kind of life she would have. One day, after Malika returned from her religious school, she noticed that some guests were visiting her home. Curious, she asked her father, "Father, who are these people?" With a smile, the chief replied, "My dear, these people have come to discuss a marriage proposal for you. Now that you've grown up, I feel it's my duty to find the right match for you." Malika was deeply moved by this. She had a very close bond with her father, and in that moment, she replied with a heavy heart, "No, father, I don't want to leave you. I will stay with you always." The chief, with great care, tried to explain, "My dear, one day you'll have to leave this house. But don't worry, your future husband will be a man of great wealth and stature, and you will live in a magnificent palace. He is a king from another city, and you will rule beside him." But Malika wasn't ready to leave her father. She couldn't bear the thought of separation. She began to feel weak and anxious, overwhelmed by the thought of leaving her father's home. One day, feeling hopeless, she went to her aunt's house for comfort. Her aunt, who was already envious of Malika's beauty and her father's wealth, had her own plans. Her son, Alamgir, was not known for being hardworking or competent, yet she desperately wanted Malika to marry him. She knew that if Malika married Alamgir, she would have more influence in the chief's palace. The aunt had previously asked the chief for Malika's hand in marriage for Alamgir, but the chief had firmly rejected the proposal, saying, "There is no match between my daughter and your son. Alamgir is lazy and useless. I won't ruin my daughter's future by marrying her to him." When the aunt saw Malika come to her for help, she saw an opportunity to manipulate the situation. Malika, desperate for answers, told her aunt, "Please help me. Tell my father that I don't want to leave this palace or marry anyone. I want to stay here forever." The aunt, sensing her chance, began to twist Malika's thoughts. She said, "I had asked for Alamgir's proposal on your behalf, but your father humiliated me in front of everyone. Does he not see the qualities in Alamgir that I do? Why does he refuse him?" Malika, already confused and distressed, looked at Alamgir and decided that she had no choice but to go against her father's wishes. She rushed to her father and declared, "Father, if I must marry, I will marry Alamgir, no one else." The chief was stunned. He had never expected Malika to openly defy him like this. He realized that someone must have been influencing her thoughts. He tried to explain, "Malika, you will marry Jahangir, not Alamgir. Jahangir is a good man, a Hafiz-e-Quran, and a healer. He will be able to help you in any trouble you face. What more could you want? I want the best for you, both in this world and the next." The chief tried to convince Malika, but her mind was already set. The wedding date was set, but Malika was consumed by her fear and anxiety. She couldn't understand why her father was forcing her into this marriage. Suddenly, the chief noticed that Malika was behaving strangely. Her health was deteriorating, and she began to suffer from moments of madness. She would faint and speak in delirium, repeating one thing over and over, "I will marry Alamgir. No one else." The chief was horrified and ashamed. He kept her locked in a room, afraid that her madness would be exposed to the public. Feeling humiliated, he began to pray to God, asking, "What have I done wrong? Why is my daughter like this? What have I missed?" The chief's friends, seeing his distress, advised him not to marry Malika off until he understood what was happening. If he married her off and her behavior didn't improve, people would know that something was wrong with her. The chief, overwhelmed by the situation, cried in despair. He had no answers. Meanwhile, Malika was growing more and more agitated, locked in her room. She began to think her father was punishing her for wanting to marry Alamgir. She whispered to herself, "Why did I say I wanted to marry Alamgir? What did I do wrong?" She became increasingly frustrated and anxious, but her father continued to lock her away. She thought, "Why won't my father let me out? Why won't he understand what I want?" The chief, heartbroken and confused, realized that Malika wasn't acting this way on purpose. Something else was going on. That's when he thought of Jahangir, the healer. He decided to call for Jahangir to help. Malika's behavior grew stranger by the day. She would faint suddenly, speaking strange, nonsensical things. The only words on her lips were, "If I marry, it will be Alamgir." Her father, the chief, was deeply ashamed. He had to lock Malika in a room because whenever she went outside, she would blurt out odd things. His heart was heavy with guilt as he tried to understand what was happening to his beloved daughter. He would kneel in front of God asking, "What mistake did I make that led to this?" He had no idea why this was happening. The chief's friends advised him not to marry her off just yet, warning that if Malika behaved this way after the wedding, everyone would know something was wrong with her. The chief, heartbroken and overwhelmed, wept uncontrollably. He couldn't bear the thought of his daughter being so distressed. Malika, now locked away, couldn't understand why her father had confined her to a room. She began thinking ill of him, whispering to herself, "What mistake did I make by telling him I wanted to marry Alamgir? Why is he treating me like this? Why is he locking me up? I'll never marry Jahangir. I won't." One day, the chief entered her room and fed her with his own hands. He spoke gently, "Malika, I know what you're doing. You think that if you act like this, you'll force me to let you marry Alamgir instead of Jahangir, but I can't let you do this. I'm doing what's best for you." Malika, furious, shot back, "Father, it's you who's doing all this. Why am I locked up? Why can't I leave this room? You think I'll marry Alamgir? I won't, but you're suffocating me in here. You're the chief of this village. You uphold justice for everyone. Why not for me? If I stay in here, I'll die. I can't breathe, Father. Don't do this." Hearing his daughter's words, the chief's heart shattered. He realized Malika wasn't doing this on purpose. Something was happening to her. That's when he thought of Jahangir, the religious healer and Quran Hafiz. He called Jahangir and explained everything. Jahangir, deeply moved, promised he would find a way to help Malika. When the chief asked what was wrong with Malika, Jahangir said, "She's been affected by black magic. Someone has cursed her." The chief's anger flared. "Who could do such a thing to my daughter?" Jahangir replied, "It must be someone who wants to marry her, someone who desires to have her for themselves." The chief was terrified, but Jahangir assured him that he would get to the bottom of it. The chief trusted Jahangir completely, but as the days passed, he grew anxious. Days turned into weeks, and Jahangir had not returned with any news. The chief's anxiety grew as he wondered if Jahangir had refused to investigate. Maybe he too believed Malika had lost her sanity. 2 months passed, and it became clear that Jahangir had severed ties with Malika. Now, who would marry her? The chief was desperate. Meanwhile, Malika's condition worsened. She was becoming more and more mentally unstable. Seeing this, Malika's aunt saw an opportunity. She rushed to the chief, saying, "It's not too late. Alamgir still wants to marry her, and Malika herself said she wants him. Why don't you consider it?" The chief's eyes blazed with fury. "Do you think I'm a fool? Do you think I can't see what's happening to my daughter? I will never let Alamgir marry her. He's useless, and I'll never let him be my son-in-law, even if my daughter's health deteriorates further." In a fit of rage, the chief threw his sister out of the palace, declaring, "You're no longer family. All of this is happening because of you." With his fury somewhat cooled, the chief made a firm decision. He would not lock his daughter away anymore. He would figure out what had happened to her. The chief had given up on trying to find a match for his daughter, Malika, but her mental condition continued to deteriorate. In a moment of desperation, he decided that he would ask the richest young men from all over the world to come and seek Malika's hand in marriage, because she was incredibly beautiful. Before the proposals arrived, he made sure to instruct Malika, "Look, before you go out to meet anyone, you must stay silent. Do not speak to anyone, and under no circumstances should you leave this palace. After your marriage, you will live right here in this palace." Malika was overjoyed upon hearing this and seemed relieved, but whenever she would meet the suitors, her strange fits would return. Sometimes she would faint, and other times she would start mentioning Alamgir. Every time this happened, the suitors would immediately refuse the marriage proposal. This continued for a whole month, and the chief grew increasingly worried, unsure of what to do next. His mind was clouded, and he couldn't figure out how to find a suitable match for his daughter. One day, in the middle of his worries, the chief went hunting with his friends. While in the jungle, he noticed something odd. He saw a monkey sitting all alone, looking unusually sad. The chief was curious and approached the monkey. He quickly offered the monkey some bananas, knowing that monkeys loved them. However, to his surprise, the monkey didn't even look at the bananas. The chief, determined to understand what was going on, ordered his servant to prepare an entire pot of food for the monkey. He wanted to see if the monkey would eat it. The servant did so, and to their astonishment, the monkey devoured the entire pot in one go, as if it had been starving for a long time. The chief was taken aback. He realized that this monkey was no ordinary creature. Something mysterious was at play, and he was determined to uncover the truth. He ordered his men to capture the monkey and bring it to the palace. The monkey was placed in a large cage, and to the chief's surprise, it didn't try to escape. This behavior left the chief even more intrigued. Who was this creature, and what was its connection to his daughter? The chief brought the monkey into the palace, and an idea suddenly struck him. He hurried to his daughter Malika's room. "My dear daughter, I have brought you a wonderful gift today," he said. Malika, in her state of delirium, eagerly asked, "Did you bring Alamgir?" Hearing this, the chief's temper flared. He quickly calmed himself and replied lovingly, "No, I have brought you something even better. I have brought you a monkey. Remember how much you loved watching monkeys when you were a child?" Malika's face lit up with joy. "Yes, I loved watching monkeys," she exclaimed. She quickly followed her father, and they went to the courtyard where the monkey was kept. Malika saw the monkey and immediately asked, "Show me some tricks." The monkey began performing tricks as Malika laughed with joy. She was completely captivated by the monkey, and for the first time in a long while, her mental state seemed to improve. The chief watched her, his heart swelling with happiness. However, whenever a suitor came to see her, her condition would revert to what it had been before. The chief knew deep down that someone had cast a spell on Malika, and he was determined not to let her marry anyone. He made up his mind to act. My daughter will marry in 1 week, he told his friends. You must all come to the wedding. The villagers were shocked. Who is the groom? They asked. Does he know that your daughter is mentally unstable? The chief, looking calm and composed, replied, My daughter is not crazy. She will get better. Trust me, everything will be fine. His words, though confident, left everyone in awe. Finally, the wedding day arrived. Malika, dressed as a bride, sat in her chamber, waiting. The chief had told her that she was to marry Alamgir, and that had made her calm and happy. When it came time to reveal the groom, the chief told the guests, I will show you the groom in a few days. The guests exchanged confused glances, wondering how a wedding could happen without a groom. But after the ceremony, and when the guests had left, the chief quickly brought the monkey into his room. He began reciting verses from the Quran, and as he did, something incredible happened. The monkey transformed before his eyes, changing into the shape of a young man. The chief's heart nearly stopped as he saw that the young man was none other than Jahangir. When the chief saw what had just happened, he was completely stunned. He rushed to Jahangir and asked, Jahangir, what is going on? I don't understand anything. Can you explain? Jahangir smiled and replied, Chief, it's not the right time to tell you everything. But first, can you tell me why you married your daughter to a monkey? The chief, hearing this, quickly responded, I knew you couldn't possibly be a monkey because all your actions were just like a human's. I realized that you were definitely some other kind of creature. That's why I had my suspicions, and I brought you to the palace. By the way, my daughter has always loved monkeys, but when I saw you, I decided to try my own method. You see, if there's any suspicion about a creature, reciting the Quran can reveal its true form. That's exactly what I did. But why did you do this? Why did you transform into a monkey? And how is this even possible? I just can't understand it, the chief said, worried and perplexed. Jahangir smiled again and replied, I will tell you everything in a little while, but first, I need to give Malika some special water. It's the only way she will be completely cured. Jahangir immediately rushed to Malika's room. When Malika, who was waiting for Alamgir, saw Jahangir instead, her mind went blank. She immediately jumped up and said, Father, you have done something terrible. Why have you deceived me? You made me marry Jahangir instead of Alamgir, and I didn't even know about it. Just as she was saying this, Jahangir began sprinkling the special water on her. Suddenly, Malika fainted. Seeing her in that state, the chief's eyes filled with tears. Jahangir then comforted the chief and told him the whole truth. He explained, When I went to the sorcerer who had cast the black magic on your daughter, I wanted to know who had ordered the magic. But the sorcerer became furious with me and said, I won't tell you who ordered the black magic. However, I didn't give up. I performed my own rituals and eventually found out who was behind it. I told the sorcerer, if you don't break this spell, I will ruin you. Before I could act, the sorcerer used his black magic on me, and I instantly transformed into the form of a monkey. I was completely bewildered and tried everything to stop it. I begged him, but he only laughed at my helplessness. I couldn't go back home or to you because no one would believe what had happened to me. That's when I saw you in the jungle, and I knew that the time had come for you to help me. You, being a wise man, took me in when no one else would. I knew that if any ordinary person had seen me, they would have only seen a monkey. But you immediately recognized that I was not a monkey. I knew I would only return to my true form when someone recited the Quran in front of me. I was waiting for that moment and praying for it. When I found out that you were planning to marry me to your daughter, I knew you must have doubted me, which is why you agreed to this marriage. And now, when you recited the Quran over me, I have returned to my true form. As soon as the chief heard this, he embraced Jahangir. He then spread his hands in prayer and said, "You are the only one who could bring back the smiling, happy face of my daughter. It has been so long since I've heard her laughter echo through the palace, and I miss it dearly. Will you help me?" Upon hearing this, Jahangir smiled and replied, "Now, she is not just your daughter, but she is my wife as well. I will soon reveal to you who is behind this evil act, and I will make sure that the sorcerer is punished for his deeds." Jahangir said this and immediately went back to Malika's room. She had regained consciousness, but she was perfectly fine now. The only thing she kept saying was, "Look, Jahangir, I don't want to go anywhere away from my father." Jahangir comforted her and reassured her, "You will stay in this palace." But after a little while, Malika fell into another fit, and once again she fainted. Jahangir immediately began his recitations and sprinkled the special water on her. With the help of his father, Jahangir had also dealt with the evil sorcerer. Now, the sorcerer's dark powers no longer had any control over him. It was soon revealed that the sorcerer didn't just transform Jahangir into a monkey with his black magic, but anyone who bothered him or found out his secret would also be turned into a small animal. This evil act was something he had learned from his ancestors. Through his prayers, Jahangir had now nullified the sorcerer's powers and had brought him, locked in chains, to the chief. The chief severely punished the sorcerer, beating him with a stick. But even then, the sorcerer was muttering something under his breath, as if he was still trying to cast his spells. However, his magic had no effect now, and the sorcerer was imprisoned in the chief's jail under heavy surveillance, guarded by 4 people at all times, ensuring he couldn't escape. Meanwhile, Jahangir and Malika were now fully recovered. Malika began apologizing to her father, saying, "Father, please forgive me. I can't believe all that happened to me." The chief lovingly embraced her and said, "You did nothing wrong, my daughter. The one who did wrong will be punished, and I will make sure of that." A little while later, the chief called Jahangir to his side and asked, "So, who was responsible for all this? Who orchestrated it?" Jahangir then told the chief, "It was your sister. When she found out you weren't marrying Malika off to Alamgir, and that you had humiliated her, she immediately decided to take revenge. When I visited the sorcerer, I saw your sister leaving his place, and with her was her useless son, Alamgir. I knew right then that it was their plot." Upon hearing this, the chief became furious with his sister. He immediately summoned her and locked her and her son in prison as well. Now, the chief's sister and her son were behind bars, while Malika began a happy life with Jahangir in the palace. Not long after, the chief proudly introduced Jahangir as his son-in-law to everyone. The same people who had once said, "His daughter is insane," who would marry her, were now speechless. They now knew that Malika had married the very person she was destined to be with all along.